What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and welcome to a 4 Things That Spider-Man Got Right video. Let's jump on into it. The first, sound. Now, this could be combined with the music that epically rises up as you swing around, or the voices that are recorded 2 times. One time if Peter Parker's just walking around not doing anything, and a second time that's more rushed and breathy as a vocalization of him in the midst of swinging. But I actually mean the little things, the way the car's audio reverberates around a corner in an alley, or the little brushes of wind when on the side of a building, or the way that the audio actually collapses down during foggy nights, reflecting a more claustrophobic environment that also replicates the effect of water droplets on sound. This is some absolutely excellent sound work here, and something that should be paid attention to. That brings us to number 2, which is where the weather effects actually occur, and that's New York City itself. NPCs are not easy. We've seen that in many titles throughout the ages, and in fact, games like Batman have skirted the subject and those difficulties from time to time by just not having any good guys at all, but instead just a number of bad guys, which allows for clarity of purpose for sure, but adds in its own confusion as this paradoxical thought starts to rise up in your head. If there's no one to save or guard or coerce, then what in the hell am I doing here in the first place? Now, Spider-Man mixes the large crowds of games like Watch Dogs and The Witcher when it's inside its cities, and adds to them the ability for bad guys to randomly pop up within those same groups. It gives them odd jobs and things to do around the city, like folks selling stuff on the side of the road, kids playing basketball, or hailing taxi cabs. Of course, the reason why this works so well in Spider-Man is because it offers you the one thing a good superhero needs, and that's something or someone to save. Additionally, their connection between the NPCs and New York City itself is incredibly mature. Take, for instance, street dancers. These aren't just on the side of the road. They have cardboard laid down for safety, buckets to collect money, boom boxes, and even their locations are slightly stained to show a longer period of time that group's been there. Or shops during the day with their busy seating that at night goes away. Even the chairs are being stored inside the restaurants. Everything feels lived in, and there's almost never a moment of, why in the hell is this guy standing here by this door for no reason whatsoever moment. Speaking of bad guys, this brings us to combat, which, yes, is a wide category, but bear with me. It feels different than other games prior, and that's not just due to the dexterity that Spider-Man exhibits, but also the thematic background in which this is all taking place. You may think, well, duh, and I get that, but let's sit down for a second and tell a sad story of the death of kings. So many superhero games have come and gone. Even if they aren't downright a hero, a Marvel, or a DC universe, we see games like Infamous and others come out and they try their hand at folks with powers in a world that questions why they're there in the first place. Everything from Punisher to Psyops to Infamous. But let's take Batman in particular, of course, since he's the most recent of the big superheroes to have a series of his own. Where Batman is always hinged on the power play, that debilitating bone breaking of some bad guy in the original Karate Kid movies that's barely turned to the side of a hero, he utilizes fear as his main weapon. Fear of the dark, but also fear of not being able to walk ever again. Now, Spider-Man handles this with a playfulness that both matches the overall less dreary world in which we experience it, but also with the continued one-liners throughout all of combat. This can be demonstrated quite easily when looking at the end of a combat in either one of these games. With Batman, everybody's either crippled or been thrown on their own neck. But in Spider-Man, this is nicely wrapped up with everybody in some kind of enemy burrito, where almost everyone ends the fight with a quip about the police coming to take them in. Much of this is due to the heavy world building that Insomniac has actually done prior. But this brings us to number 4, the big dog in the room, which is the major game world change that occurs more than halfway through the game. There's this fascinating break within the story later on where the world basically changes for a time and the entire city takes on a uniquely dangerous feeling. This is a major change within the gameplay. It's expanded upon by the excellent way in which the story plays out prior as well, because when all this happens, you can end up feeling like everyone betrayed you, like no matter what you did, everything went wrong. Or if you took the story beats a different way, it can feel in some small way as an understandable reaction to everything that has occurred up until that point. It really is excellent story design, and while some of it may be incidental or even accidental, in the end, Spider-Man has one of the better open world game changes mid-game that I've really ever seen. And when you look at it, much of this is due to how Spider-Man's world isn't just outfitted with buffoons and ruffians carrying rifles, but instead is a mix of the normal citygoers and those that want to hold your head underwater just long enough to see what would happen. World turns are incredibly hard to do in a game, incredibly difficult, especially to nail thematically as well as within the gameplay itself. This really does definitely avoid the everyone is against you kind of trope, and instead allows for you to stretch your legs both as a savior of New York at the starting, as well as maybe the scourge of New York at the ending. Both characters with a fair share of detractors, as well as some true Spidey fans. That story change in the middle of the game is absolutely fantastic. So anyway, that's 4 things that I loved about Spider-Man that I thought that they really did right. I'd like to know what you thought that they did right, what you didn't like, what you did like. Leave them in the comments. As always, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike the video, give it a thumbs down. You can check out Reddit or Twitter. You can also always become a patron on the Patreon website, which helps me do videos like this as well as reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.